Welcome to another episode of According to Amabile. I'm Michele Amabile, your humble hostess, and today I'm very excited because I have an esteemed colleague on the line, and this is Lee Mrowicki. And Lee is known as the voice of the Stone Pony, and he's given us a gift. It's called Legendary, the Stone Pony. It is an audiobook telling the story of the Stone Pony in his words, as only Lee could tell. Lee, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's my pleasure.
Now, Lee, what possessed you to do an audiobook? I know that you've been pretty much the pony historian. You've been on many panels, and you have a radio background, like me. We'll get into this, but I want to know what inspired you to do an audiobook.
Well, it was during COVID that we couldn't do much of anything. The pony was closed, Wonder Bar was closed, and people had always been saying, why don't you write a book of your experiences? So I had started this probably maybe 10 years ago, actually, but never really took it seriously until COVID, when we had a lot of time to work on new projects. And so I started typing. And then I started to say to myself, people know me more for my voice than for my typing. So why don't I just do it as an audiobook? And I can include a whole bunch of other things like music and artwork and photos and things like that. Whereas if it was just a book, they would just see words. So this is a little more of a let's say, multimedia experience.
I think it's genius. And
well, you're not the first one to say that. And people have said, yeah, it's great that you're voicing. And I said, yeah, well, that's what I do. I voice stuff. So why not? And I would have probably done an audiobook anyway. But after I started writing all these pages and everything, I said, I'm wasting my time. I should just read it. And the book is actually, if you've ever done this or talked to any author, it's really, really expensive to try and put a book out. And I had talked to Amazon and other people. They wanted like $2,000 just to get it started. And I said, well, okay, why don't I just do this myself?
Well, the DIY attitude also plays into the spirit of the Stone Pony. And you have a storied history going back to the pony. And you're the one that lives to tell. You were there to see all the big moments with Cats on a Smooth Surface, Back to the South Side, Johnny, the big NEW radio broadcast, and the JLK broadcast, which we will get into. But tell us all about that.
That's a funny story because I was working at WJLK at the same time I was in college on the radio station at Monmouth University, then college. So one day I'm answering the phone and somebody calls and says, hey, this is Bob McAllen from WJLK. I'm wondering if you know anybody up there that would like a part-time job. And I said, I thought for a second. I said, yeah, me. So I got the job and I was the assistant producer for commercials and everything because it was at that time an automated station basically. So I had some experience recording stuff at the college station. And so to make a long story short, we get the phone call from Epic Records. And Bob McAllen, who was the general manager, walks into the studio and says, do you think that we could handle a live broadcast? Now, up until then, we had done the football games. We had done one of my stories sort of goes around the odd things that you would do in radio. And I produced and did everything, engineering, announced everything, an Easter sunrise service in Asbury Park. So we had some experience, and we had experience from, our radio station at Monmouth. So I said, sure, I think we can handle it. The only one problem is that we're not in stereo.
Oh
So
no.
WJLK was 1310 AM and 94 FM, the radio voice of the Asbury Park Press. But at that time, it was still in mono. So what actually happened after we made that agreement with Epic Records, they bought us some equipment to do a simulated stereo. Now, the reason why we got that phone call was because the station that was supposed to do the concert, WNEW FM, the famous Rock of New York, they wanted to have a contract between them and Mr. Springsteen that he would appear and he would play. Now, if you know Bruce, nobody tells him what to do,
No.
right?
No.
So
he's the boss. You
he,
don't tell him.
he wasn't going to do whatever they wanted. And, it was basically him saying, well, no, this is Johnny's night, not mine. So he didn't want anybody publicizing that he was going to appear and using, all of his stuff in that respect. So we got the local boys just, we got it by accident, basically, because WNEW-FM didn't want to do it. Now, the funny thing about it was, here I am in a plain white van in the back of the Stone Pony, getting my feed off the Jukes. And actually, it was Bruce's people that were doing the live broadcast. But the guys from WNEW-FM were all there. And I said to other people, and I said, you know what? I thought I saw them kicking each other in the butt because they didn't do this show.
Of course.
But it was really, it was a tremendous experience, and people had voted it the one concert or event that brought notoriety to Asbury Park.
And
So,
you were there for it.
yeah, yeah. And it was really kind of strange too, because there was no way to listen to the show if you were part of the show and you weren't on stage yet. So my little van was home to Springsteen, to Ronnie Spector, and other guests, including the infamous Lee Dorsey, who's famous for a whole bunch of great records from the 60s, who were going to be part of the show. So they had to call Ronnie Spector up on stage. They had to call Lee up on stage, and they were all hanging out with me. So I heard them. I said, Lee, you better get going because they're calling you on the stage. And they had to get bouncers making their way through the club because it was so packed. That the story, well, it's kind of a joke, that it was so crowded, people couldn't clap like this. They had to clap like this. Yep, that's it. The place held probably legally 250 people, and people were always saying that there was over 1,000 people there. But yeah, it was quite an event, and I guess people had recognized it as the thing that brought some notoriety to Asbury Park, even though Bruce had already 3 albums out. So, it was the local boys now getting some recognition.
That put it on the map.
Yeah, I guess.
Now, you weren't the first Stone Pony DJ, but you were the most known Stone Pony DJ.
Right.
Now, how did you get that gig?
Well, after the concert, the two owners, Butch Pielka and Jack Roig, had asked me to see if I would help them out with marketing and promotion and stuff like that. So I had a little studio at home, and I would do some like mixtapes for them. They bought a reel-to-reel recorder, and I had one at home. And so I would make tapes as if I was DJing there in person. So that went on for about a year, maybe more. And then they asked me to do it live full time. So that's kind of, being in the right place at the right time is what it was.
And then you got a front row seat to some of the best shows in the evolution
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
pony. those Sunday nights, those cats on a smooth surface nights, those
Yeah.
that storied time with Bruce coming in and with all our old pals, Ray Anderson and everybody
Hmm.
playing. I know John Eddy got got his start at the pony shows. Tell me about what it was like in those days for those of us that were too young to sneak in.
Yeah, but some of yous did. In
uh,
fact,
I plead the fifth.
my sister tells a story that I called home and told my mother to bring my, I guess she was 15 at the time, to bring her down to the club, and I would sneak her in and have her in the DJ booth so she could see Bruce play. Later on, she got a job at the club, working the front door, and then as a waitress, and then as a bartender. Half my family actually worked with me at the Pony. But those were nights that were just so special, and you know, it was just amazing how how once people sort of heard that, oh, Bruce is going to play, that they lined up for the payphone inside the club as well as out on the boardwalk to call their friends to tell them to come by. And for a while there, in one summer, Bruce played just about every Sunday that summer. And I always tell people I think that the song Dancing in the Dark was written about going to the Pony on Sunday nights, being a gun for hire, etc. And the dance floor on in the Stone Pony was kind of dark with some, colored lights and everything. So that to me was dancing in the dark.
That must have been an insane time. It's like, I mean, think about it. There was no cell phones to text anybody. There was
No,
no spring
no,
nut group.
no, no. That's why the line to the one phone in the club, the pay phone, and outside on the boardwalk, there was a long line. People trying to get a hold of people to tell them to come by because Bruce is playing.
Yeah,
And it was like you never knew he was actually going to play because there were times when Bruce just came by to hang out and see his friends play and talk to people. He was he's always a gregarious kind of guy just to hang out with, and but there were times where it's maybe one or two drinks and oh yeah, can I play? So
I think
who's
I've
going
got
to
some
say
cassettes
no?
from that time, like him
Who's
doing
going to
Pretty
say no?
Flamingo. What was your favorite song that he used to cover when he came in? He must have had a couple of go-tos that he did with the band.
It was funny because Bruce used to come up to the DJ booth, and sometimes he would just jump in there and, start to look through my records and stuff like that. Yes, we did play records back in that day.
He sounds like me. I did that all the time. I drove DJs nuts.
Well, he
Probably
comes
did it to
up
you a
one
few
time
times.
and you had to go up about a 2 foot up into it was almost a stage area. And he comes up and he says, I want to hear a wanderer. So he's always, had an affection for older music, and especially things like Dion and there are tons and tons of stuff from the '60s that he would go through, and he'd be pulling out records left and right, asking me to play this, play this, play this. So yeah, it was kind of interesting. And then of course when you see Bruce up on stage, the world just revolves around him at that point in time. And you just couldn't get a close enough seat. I mean, and the club's not that big, and from the DJ booth to the stage is only about 60 feet. So if you're in the DJ booth, then you're very close to the stage. But there's not a bad seat in the house, is what it is.
Were you there those nights when Patty sang?
Yeah.
Were
Oh
you
yeah.
there that night he talks about when she sang that song?
Well, she's in the book, and she used to come up, yeah, like sort of in the beginning of the night, because I don't know whether she was, living at home from Deal, or she was from New York and then took the train down. I don't think she had a car yet. But anyway, she would come and hang out with me in the DJ booth at the beginning of the night. And then later on, she'd go back to the back bar and be hanging, talking to, she was good friends with Bobby Bandiera. And in fact, I think Bobby was taken on tour to teach her how to play guitar.
Really?
Yeah, because she's a singer, but she wasn't a guitar player. And now she does have that ability. But yeah, Patty was always there. And then she was there singing some older songs. The Boy from New York City was one of the famous songs that she did. And Bobby Bandiera is, I think Bon Jovi called him a human jukebox.
Well, that is true.
He probably knows every song under the sun. So it didn't matter if she said, let's play this, Bobby would know it, and so would the band. And after a while, it got to be that it was a pretty polished performance as well. But there were other people that actually stopped by to play with cats as well. But those are the two famous people, that's for sure.
Were you there? You were there the night they did Born in the USA when they previewed.
Yeah,
Now,
and that
tell
was
me about that night.
all right.
I have
Well,
to know about that night.
I sort of get a heads up every once in a while, but most of the time I didn't. Um, so the day manager comes over to me and he says, John's going to go on first tonight. And I said, okay, I'm flexible, so there's no problem with that. I said, so what are we going to do afterwards? He said, no, Bruce is going to play for a while. It's kind of nonchalant that, somebody says, oh, Bruce is going to play for a while. So, everybody knows that, John Eddie's going on early for a reason. And then after John gets off, if you saw some equipment go up on stage, you knew what was going on. And the one thing I always say, if you see Danny's glockenspiel go up on stage, it's Bruce and the band. And that's what you could have.
Good
That's
tip.
what happened, right? So it's a good hint. And also, if you saw Kevin Buell, who was Bruce's guitar tech, and you see Terry McGovern, who's Bruce's road manager, if they're in the house, then you know something's happening, and that's what really happened. So I don't think Patty played that night. I'm not sure if Nils played that night yet either. Now, the real reason Patty was brought into the band at first was because Nils was sick. And Nils would always handle the higher parts of songs. And Nils couldn't sing. So he could play, but he had some problems with his voice. So that's why Patty was brought into the band to actually cover up those high parts, those high harmony parts. But then, of course, one thing led to another. So
that's some interesting information, Lisa. You're a wealth of information, and it's all here in this book. Now, I was looking at you have some photo credits. Here's a blast from the past. Steve Zuckerman. I haven't heard that name in forever.
Yeah, passed away.
I know.
A few years ago.
And Stan Goldstein, our good pal.
Yeah.
Pictures from the Asbury Park Press.
Right. Well, there were a lot of articles and photos of Bruce and other things that happened. So that's why I had to give those people credit. But there's some unique artwork in there too, because I was the one that did a lot of the Stone Pony t-shirts. And what happened was in the beginning, Jack and Butch, the two owners, the original owners, had gotten a friend of theirs to do their t-shirts. And then when WJLK came in, I'd asked a friend of mine to make up some special shirts for the Southside concert. So afterwards, the two owners asked me, do I know anybody that does t-shirts? I says, yeah, I got a good friend of mine, and I'm helping him do t-shirts on a part-time basis, because I was actually a part-timer at WJLK. I worked only about 30 hours a week. So in order to make extra money, I would help my friend print t-shirts. So we got the Stone Pony account, and we got other people that bands and things like that we made t-shirts for. And eventually the two owners of the Pony had a bar down the street that was originally called the Empire Bar, and they bought it and changed it to Quack Quack. Now, Jack Roig had always an interesting personality and came up with some interesting names, and Quack Quack was one of them. So it got to the point where liquor liability licenses and insurance were starting to really take a toll on a small beer and shot joint. So they decided that why don't we make our own t-shirts? So they changed that building over to a t-shirt shop, the T-shirt Emporium. And so we made our own t-shirts. And I think we were one of the first clubs ever to go on a big scale like that, to sell our own stuff and change the designs. And we used to sell those tour jackets and things like that. So now it's strange because that building was knocked down to create a parking lot. So every time I have to go to work now, I have to park in the parking lot that used to be my office.
I couldn't even imagine how weird that is
It is.
for you.
It is. And this is hallowed ground. Why are people parking here?
You were behind, I know you're a baseball guy. Wanted to talk about the Pony Express softball league.
Yeah.
I love
Well,
those
actually,
pictures.
it was turned out that we were playing pickup games and things like that. And then, Bruce challenged us to get a game together, and he had his guys in his band and road crew and things like that. And of course, we had the bartenders and etc., floormen from the Pony. So we called ourselves the Pony Express. Or, well, yeah, it was originally the Pony Express. So we had a couple of three, maybe four weekends in a row that we played over at Homedale High School. So if you were stuck on the parkway going down the shore, you sometimes would see a bunch of people playing off right, where the Garden State Arts Center is. Across from the highway was Homedale High School, and that was us playing softball in the summers. And the agreement was that we would provide the liquid refreshments, and Bruce and his ever assistant Obi Dietzik, or Jejic, as her real name was. She was the one that brought the grill and bought the hamburgers, hot dogs, and stuff like that. And they put it in the back of Bruce's pickup truck and brought it down to the field. But after a while, we got a little more serious about playing softball. So we actually created a softball team that played in the Eatontown Men's League. And we were only in it for 1 year, and we took the championship. So that's the history of the Pony Express.
Clarence was a football player. How was he as a baseball player?
Well, he had his own team for a while when he had the Big Man's West bar. So we used to play games, and that's another strange story. Before Clarence bought it, it was a place called the Blue Diamond, a beer and shot joint, local Red Bank place, and they had a softball team. And I knew some of the guys that played on the team, and they knew my history in playing baseball. So I said, well, why don't you come play softball with us? And I said, all right, I'll be interested. I never played softball before. It's always baseball. So when Clarence bought the place and decided he wanted to have softball games as well, too. So I got included in some of that, too. And we used to play against WNEW-FM and places like that. So it was kind of cool.
Sounds it.
Yeah, yeah.
You brought up Obi. I know that there's a story there. She wanted you to be on VH1, didn't she?
Yeah, everybody has these aspirations of doing something different than what they were doing. And Obi said to me, the Pony's not going to be here forever with the redevelopment, kind of a black cloud above our heads. So she says, you think you'd be interested in being a VJ? I says, what's a VJ? He says, oh, well, MTV's creating this new station called VH1. He says, I could get you an interview. I said, okay, I'll try it. So I had a friend of mine who had a video camera, and we did an audition for them. And it turns out they took Don Imus in the morning, as they wanted somebody with a name. So I can understand that. But yeah, I had that opportunity. I had a couple opportunities at other radio stations and stuff like that, but it felt really funny to leave Asbury Park after having my roots there for so many years. And I wasn't, hurting for money or anything like that. So I stayed.
Well, you kind of like stopped the book before, like, the vinyl years. I'm sure that was deliberate.
Yeah, what happened was that the pony was under an ill-advised bankruptcy,
I
and
remember.
the trustee didn't like Butch or Jack at all. And, there were a couple of times when the trustee would come in the middle of the night and empty the cash registers. So what does a bartender do with no money in the cash register? So there were a lot of things, I guess. And so he decided he was going to sell the place. In fact, it was strange as it may seem. And Monday mornings, what I would do, I would go down the pony and I would change the outgoing answer machine tape. And I get to the back door, put my key in, and it doesn't turn. And then I see a padlock that's on the back door. And so I called Jack up and I said, Jack, you got a key for this padlock that's on the back door? I didn't know there was one there. He said, what padlock?
Oh no.
So that was the last time I was actually in the club. In fact, all my records were raided by people they let in. A lot of
Oh,
equipment was raided. I mean, I had some a good collection of of albums and 45s and stuff. Luckily, I got to save some of the 45s, so I still have those. But so the thing went to bankruptcy to a sale, and I got an attorney to help out, and he had his connections. He was connected to Billy Joel's attorney, who was going to help us get a mortgage as an offer for the place in the name of the employees because we had gotten stiffed. Our last paychecks were nowhere to be found. And the bankruptcy trustee decided they were going to take a cash offer, and that was the end.
that's a sad tell. I mean,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
pony did bounce back, and it's back in action. And
Oh, yeah. Well, what happened was in 2000, a few investors from Jersey City decided that they were going to put their money in and try and resurrect it after it had gone into another bankruptcy. Um, so they asked me if I would come back and try and help restore the pony to its previous glory, and I said, "Yeah, I'd be interested." So that was it. The opening weekend was the Smithereens, the Lord Gunner Group, and Patti Smith, I think, too. So yeah, came back with a vengeance.
such great tales, and it's all in legendary as told by you. The Stone Pony, 74 to 91.
Yeah, I thought those were the glory years, and everybody does agree. And although, Stone Pony is still going strong, and a lot of great things have happened since. But those were the days where people have great memories, that's for sure.
Like I said, you were there as a witness to history, the 3M benefit.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, in fact, I was brought into federal court as a witness. Which was kind of a strange. I mean, I got to be friends with Stan Fisher, who was president of the union, and we were going to put on a concert at Freehold Park. And then after we had gotten the permit and everything, we were going to put up a stage and have some local bands play. They were fearful that Springsteen was going to play and would create a huge riot or whatever, overwhelm the park system. But so the union decided to sue the county, and it was brought in federal court. Had to go to Newark few times to be a witness, and the union won, except that they only won a $1 award. Now,
Dollar?
$1, and it's
Wow.
usually tripled as an award. So they got a total of $3.
$3.
Yep. But yeah, that was well, Bruce had actually he was going to sponsor a tour of a play called Lady Beth. You know, Lady Beth was the nickname for the Bethlehem Steel Company. And it was the same union of the 3M workers that he was really concerned about locally. So he decided to put some money up and got a PA rental and asked me if I had anybody that could actually take this thing around, this play. And so we got a sound system from the Clare brothers, who was his sound company at the time. And I hired one of the guys that used to work for the Eddie and the Cruisers. And he took it in a station wagon throughout the country to put on this play called Lady Beth. And it was the story of the steelworkers being put out of work. And we did a play like it, very similar to it, at the Pony to start the whole thing off. And it was all, you know, courtesy of Bruce and his generosity.
Which knows no bounds.
Yeah, in most cases, yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And people don't even know these kind of things. I mean, nobody knew what was going on at that time and who was behind it. But yeah, it's like, you know, somebody's paying the bills and it was, you know, his office, quote unquote, or, you know, of course, he was leading the way in that respect.
Now, in your book, Lee, do you get into a lot of the late 80s appearance, like those times when he showed up, like that Tunnel of Love time?
Well, you
Do you
know,
cover that
I
period?
cover everything, you know, in the time period, 74 to 91. And like I said before, him showing up on Sunday nights to
Oh,
me was the basis for Dancing in the Dark.
the glory days.
Yeah, well, you call that glory days as well, too. Um, but, you know, there were so many things that you could put, you know, your finger on about, well, what happened, you know, when this and this and this. And of course, um, there was just so many people, and Bruce was friends with a lot of people. So a lot of people in the industry would show up. Here's a funny story. I didn't tell this I don't think I told this in the book, but one time, couple shows up at the front door. Now, there were times when the ABC in New Jersey, the Alcoholic Beverage Commission, cracked down on underage drinking. So everybody and anybody walked to the front door, they would have to provide identification. So two people come up to the front door, a couple. And I wasn't, of course, I didn't see anything at the front door because I was busy working and my
You're in the
position.
DJ booth. You were
Well, I
busy.
was pretty far away from the front door. All of a sudden, somebody comes up to me and says, they wouldn't let them in the front door. They didn't have any ID with them. I said, who are you talking about? Oh, it was Billy and Christy.
Oh no.
It was Billy Joel and Christy Brinkley. Yeah, couldn't get into the Pony to go see Bruce play because they didn't have ID on them.
Oh
And you can
no.
understand the guys at the front door. Now, most of the time, they probably wouldn't recognize Billy Joel if he walked in. You know, he's a short guy. And of course, Christy Brinkley was pretty famous back then. But, you know, everybody was on really um, on thin ice because of all the crackdown on the ABC and people checking IDs. You had to have. And there was a big sign on the front door. It says two forms of ID needed to get in, which means you not only had to have your license. Now, back then, it didn't have a picture on it, but you had some other form of identification to get in the door. So,
And I
yeah,
recall Jack telling a story about Bruce waiting online with everybody else to get to the pony. And he was like, Bruce, you don't need to wait online.
yeah, and it was just that's the kind of person he was. He was always trying to be one of the guys or one of the regular people. That was the case also when we did the Jersey Artists for Mankind song, "We've Got the Love," because we had half the E Street Band, sorts of other locals, and Bruce wanted to become part of it, but he didn't want to sing. He just wanted to play guitar to be one of the guys. And unfortunately, strange as it may seem, Lance Larson at that time sounded a whole lot like Bruce. So when his part came up in the song, everybody thought that was no, 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 no. That's a local guy named Lance Larson. It's Bruce on guitar during the solos. So, but that's how he wanted it. And so yeah, it worked. That the song sold a lot of copies, and we were almost 300,000 copies throughout the world. And it wasn't just because Bruce was on it; it was because it was a good song.
Now, Lee, do you talk about a lot of the other bands that played, like Cahoots and Bachagaloop
Yeah,
and like
yeah, they're all
Tony
mentioned.
Lotto?
Yeah. In fact, I put together a uh, a radio show, and one of my radio shows is called Beyond the Palace. And what I did was I put together, it's about almost 2 hours of music of people like Cahoots and the Shakes and bands that had played throughout the late 70s and 80s. So, in fact, that's going to be next week's episode of Beyond the Palace, which is on asburymusic.com.
And we will all check it out. Of course, you got the Seaside Serenade coming up.
Yeah, that's an interesting situation. We started this, 7 years ago at the Wonder Bar. And of course, it got to be so popular, it outgrew the Wonder Bar very, very quickly. So then we had it at the Pony, and it's coming back to the Pony after a couple years away. Um, it's 600 screaming Bruce Springnuts that when they walk in the door, they're on the dance floor the whole 6 hours. It's the most unusual thing you ever want to see. They are avid, in some respects, you might call them rabid Bruce fans because they are just amazing people. It's created a huge, huge family of Bruce fans throughout the world, and people are coming to the serenade from four corners of the world. I meet people from Australia, from France, from England, etc., not only here in the United States that are all coming on Sunday to see me play 6 hours of Springsteen music.
Now, what I want to know, Lee, and this is what I'm dying to know. How do you curate 6 hours of Springsteen music? How do you, I mean, do you work this
Well, they,
together
they
with
give me
Howie
a
or do you just,
list of stuff they want me to play, and
okay.
particularly, it's a set list, and I either get some of the music from them, and some of it I would have on my own, because the guy that's in charge, they call him the warden, Howie Chaz, has probably got the biggest collection of Springsteen music you ever want to see. So he feeds me some of the stuff, some of it I have in my own library, and they give me a list, and I play according to the list. And you just can't have it like on a Spotify list or something like that. It's got to be blended properly and segued. Otherwise, it's not cool. Let me put it that way. So that's what they pay me for to bring 6 hours of music, and I think it might be a Guinness Book of World Records. That 6 hours straight of Springsteen music.
Well,
It's a
we're all
lot of
looking
fun.
forward
It's a
to it.
lot of fun. It goes very, very quickly. We start off this week. It's going to start at 11:15. Doors will open. It'll end around 6. They could stay till midnight if they were allowed to, because they all are just they're spring nuts, that's for sure. They live up to their name.
Now, now, Tell us, Lee, where can people order your book?
Well, you can go to Venmo and you can use my name. It's at Lee Mrowicki. Uh, I'm kind of keeping the price down. I had been talking to people that said, well, we can get you into Walmart, we can get you into Amazon and everything, but it's got to be what they consider a comparable price to other audiobooks. So I said, what do you think? They said, well, it should go for 26.95. I said, that's a lot of money for, but I understand, it's to me it's special, but I'm putting out a friends and family discount for $20 even. So people that I know will get first shot at it before Walmart and Amazon get a hold of the thing. But yeah, they can. Easiest way is Venmo. That's for sure.
Okay.
Yep.
Lee, thank you so much for joining me today. I love the
Uh,
guitars in the background, by the way, the
been
Hofner
my
bass back
pleasure. Been
there.
my pleasure. I teach music as well too. I don't know if some people don't know that about me, but I've been playing since I was like 13 years old. Um, I was in the famous band, the Dull Brothers. And in fact, Bruce wanted to play with us one time, and we told him he was just too exciting to be able to play for us. We were dull. We lived up to our name. Although Gary Talent played with us, and that's a trivia question. Boom Carter was the original drummer in the Dull Brothers, and he was replaced by Vinny Lopez.
Ah,
Flip that around, Vinny was replaced by Boom Carter in the E Street Band.
crazy.
Amazing, right?
A
And I
Neptune
think,
boy like you.
well, we always joke about the Dull Brothers because when Bruce had an international tour, we had an intercontinental tour or intergalactic tour, and we had T-shirts. In fact, the first gig we did at the Pony, we had 400 people there for a band nobody knew about except through rumors. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
And Lee Mrowicki, by the way, my father-in-law thinks it's so cool that you recruit for the Cubs. He's a Cubs fan.
Oh, really? No kidding. Yeah. That's a strange story. I mean, I was always into baseball. I was coaching a collegiate summer team, and the Cubs asked me to help them with a tryout. Then they asked me after it was over, why don't you have lunch with us? I said, well, I got to go to work in a little while, so I'm going to have to take a rain check. He says, no, why don't you come have lunch with us? And I said, well, maybe next time. He says, no, you should have lunch with us. I wasn't getting the hint. And then they offered me a part-time position at that time. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, that's for sure.
Just such a fascinating life. Legendary. The story of the Stone Pony, 74 to 91.
And the people who made it so.
And the people who made it so.
Because it's
thank you.
not really, it's not about me, it's about the place. And I was just a part of it.
A big part of it. Thank you, Lee, for coming on According to Amabile and talking to me today. Lee Mrowicki,
Thank
we
you.
love you.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.